Welcome to the concept file on deriving the main point of the passage. In this file, our discussion will revolve around what the main point of a passage means and what are its basic characteristics and scope. Then we will show you how to derive this main point. Next, we will show you how to identify the main point questions. Finally, we will talk about common traps in the RC answer choices from the perspective of the main point questions. So let us get started. What do we mean when we say this is the main point of the passage? Well, it is the main idea or message that the author wants to communicate with the reader. In other words, it is the very purpose or motive behind the author's writing the passage. Now that we have defined the main idea, let us see what are its basic characteristics or features. Since it is the main point of the passage, it should be a single sentence summary of the entire passage. In other words, this single sentence should cover all the broad aspects of the entire passage. It should not be restricted to covering only a part of the passage. We will talk more about this broad and limited scope later. Because it is a single line summary, the details mentioned in the passage are not included in it. Another aspect of the main point is that it can be worded in general or broad terms, or it can be worded in terms that are specific or particular to the terms mentioned in the passage. With this definition and characteristics of the main point now clear, let us move towards demonstrating how to actually derive the main point. We already know from the definition of the main point that it is the main motive behind writing the passage. Well, how does the author arrive at this main point? He discusses various aspects related to it and covers this discussion in different paragraphs dedicated to these different aspects. Hence, if we combine the key ideas of these paragraphs, that is the paragraph summaries, we should be able to arrive at the main idea. In fact, we can illustrate this derivation with the help of a simple diagram. Let us see how. The first and most important requirement for deriving the main point are accurate parasummaries. An accurate parasummary will give you the purpose of each paragraph. When these summaries are put together, we need to connect them by understanding the flow of information from the first para to the second and from the second to the third. Understanding the flow of information helps us understand the author's purpose in writing them, and thus piecing together the main point becomes a summary of all these summaries. We are sure that this illustration makes the derivation process absolutely clear to you. We will see this process in action with the help of two examples. The first will be of a 4-paragraph passage, and we will show you how the 4 summaries, when put together, lead to the main point. The second example is where there is only a single paragraph, and we will show you how to divide it into sections and summarize each section to derive the main point. So let's get started with the first example. Here is the passage which we will use to show you how to derive the main point. The first 2 paras are the same paragraphs that we have used in the paragraph summary concept file. We have added 2 more paragraphs to the same passage. We have already summarized these added paragraphs for you intentionally. We haven't asked you to summarize them now so that you can focus on the process of deriving the main point. Let's do a quick recap of the first 2 para summaries to refresh your memory. In the first para, the author mentions the opioid crisis and the financial crisis and briefly presents the main causes responsible for the 2 crises and the risk factors that was common in the 2 cases. In the second para, he gives a detailed explanation of the major cause, that is unethical strategies behind the financial crisis. In the third para, he elaborates upon the major cause, that is promotional offers that brought about the opioid crisis. Finally, in the fourth paragraph, the author lays the blame for the crisis on the absence of government regulations which could have curbed the unethical practices in both the cases. Though these practices were beneficial in the short term, they led to crisis in the long term. Let us now connect the flow of ideas in the 4 paragraphs. First, the author mentions some crisis situations and their major causes. then elaborates or explains these core causes in the next two paragraphs so as to finally build a case that governmental constraints could have stopped the crisis. And thus we have our main point. The purpose of the author is to show with the help of some crisis situations, examples in this case, how the government was responsible for the long-term problems because it allowed unethical, although beneficial practices in the short run. See how easy it is to draw the main point? With this example, it is clear why the main point of the passage is called a summary of paragraph summaries. We will now see how this main point can be worded in different ways. It could be stated in general or broad terms, or could be in specific or particular terms specific to the passage at hand. Let's see for ourselves. What do we mean by broad and particular main points? Well, both are two versions of main points. There are two ways of writing the main point, and both are correct. Now, here is the main point as derived in the previous slide. Note how there is no reference to the names of the opioid crisis or financial crisis in the main point statement. Instead of the names, just the word examples has been used. Thus, we can see that the main point has been worded in general or broad terms. This is what we call the broad main point. On the other hand, take a look at this version of the main point. The names of the two crises specific to the passage have been used here, unlike the broad version above. This is stating the main point in particular terms. Now that we have seen the process of deriving the main point and have also understood how the main point can be worded in broad and particular terms, let us apply that process to derive the main point of a single paragraph passage. Here is a single paragraph passage for you. Take a stab at reading and summarizing it. If you are wondering how to summarize it in the absence of separate paragraphs, here is a quick tip. You keep dividing the single paragraph into sections as you read along. And the easiest way to do this is to break the paragraph into a section wherever there is a change of thought or ideas. How will you spot this? You will spot this change by following involved and evolved reading. So let's get on with our reading and summarizing. We hope our tip was helpful while you took a stab at the previous slide on your own. For now, while we derive the main point together, we will single out a section for you, as you can see below, while keeping other sections blurred so that you can concentrate on one section at a time. We will also keep summarizing each section as we proceed. So let's get started. Medical marijuana is the medical use. So we are talking about the medical use of marijuana, of the cannabis sativa or cannabis indica plant. So this marijuana is obtained from a certain plant to relieve symptoms of or treat diseases and conditions. So all in all, marijuana is medically used to treat diseases. Let's read on. The plant was used medically for centuries. So the author is telling us that this particular plant was used medically in the past until the early 1900s. So in the early 1900s, the medical use was stopped. Strong opinions exist. So the author is saying that there are very strong ideas and thoughts which presently exist, including both pros and cons, that is, opinions and ideas both for and against about the benefits of medical marijuana. All right, so here the author is telling us that there are strong opinions both for and against about the medical use of or the medical benefits of medical marijuana. So in short, we can say that this section of this paragraph is basically telling us that there are certain strong opinions that currently exist, both for and against whether the benefits of medical marijuana is really there or not. Let's read on the next section. Now, we have divided this part into another section because there is a change of idea here. That is what we felt, and you will also feel too as we read on. THC, the psychoactive compound in marijuana. Okay, so the author is talking about a compound present in marijuana is responsible for the high people feel. All right, so THC is responsible for the feeling of high excitement that people are given if they take marijuana. Let's read on. CBD or cannabidiol, another compound in marijuana. So here the author is talking about another compound present in marijuana that is not psychoactive. So unlike THC, CBD is not psychoactive. It is thought to be responsible for the majority of the medical benefits. Okay, so CBD is the compound in marijuana which gives the medical benefits of the particular plant. Let's read on. Over the years, so the author is talking about the past, research has yielded results. All right, so the author is talking about past research results. Let us see what these results have to say. To suggest that marijuana may be of benefit. All right, so these past research results suggest that marijuana may be beneficial. Let's see, beneficial for what? In the treatment of chronic pain. All right, so in the treatment of pain that lasts over a long period of time, post-traumatic stress disorder, and nausea and vomiting caused by chemotherapy. In short, we can say that the author is talking about certain benefits of marijuana as suggested by the past year's research. And this is how we can summarize it. This paragraph, or this section rather, states the benefits of medical marijuana as suggested by some researchers. Let's read the next section. All right, let's read. However, okay, so this is a transition word here. And we know two things. One, a contrast is about to come up. It is also a signal for us to change this, to divide this part of the paragraph into another section. So let's read on. However, at higher doses, okay, so when marijuana is given in higher doses, what happens? Side effects include, so the author is going to talk about the side effects of marijuana taken at higher doses. Include dizziness, paranoia, mood changes, and hallucinations. These are all the list of side effects of higher doses of marijuana. Let's read on. Adverse effects of cannabis. All right, so we know the author is continuing with the negative effects or the side effects of marijuana. Cannabis, remember, the plant cannabis was the plant from which marijuana is extracted, so the author is still talking about marijuana. Adverse effects of cannabis, such as, so the author is giving examples of the adverse effects: increased risk of schizophrenia and loss of IQ. So these are the two increased risks is greater in adolescents. Okay, so adolescents are at a greater risk of contracting schizophrenia or losing their IQ. Let's read on. Also, okay, here is another transition word, and we know the author is going to add to the mention of the side effects stated earlier. So we know we can stay in the same section. Also, there are public health concerns. Okay, there are worries over public health. Let's see about what? About the safety of driving. Okay, this is regarding safety while driving under the influence of medical marijuana. So it means people, when they are prescribed medical marijuana and then they drive after taking this drug, whether they are safe or not, or there are concerns over that. Additionally, okay, so again the author is going to add to the adverse effects mentioned earlier. Additionally, cases of opioid overdose deaths. So there have been cases of deaths due to an overdose of this drug. We were already talking about higher doses earlier, and here we're talking about an overdose. So let's see, the overdose deaths have surfaced in states. So the author is talking about deaths because of opioid overdose in states with legal medical marijuana usage. Okay, so in states where it is legal to use medical marijuana, cases of overdose deaths have been reported. All in all, we see that in this section of the paragraph, the author is talking about the side effects or negative effects of medical marijuana. And we can summarize it accordingly. The author mentions the side effects of medical marijuana. Let's read the last section. Let's read on. In the face of such side effects. Okay, so in the previous section, the author was talking about certain side effects of medical marijuana. And this paragraph starts on that note. It tells us even when such side effects are present, out of over 60 peer-reviewed research studies. All right, so here the author is talking about 60 peer-reviewed research studies. What are these studies on? Examining the benefits of medical marijuana. Okay, so what the author is saying here is, even though side effects of medical marijuana exist, there have been over 60 peer-reviewed research studies which examine the benefits of medical marijuana. Let's see what more. Only 68% found benefit, while 8% found no benefit. So of these 60 research studies, 68% found that medical marijuana was beneficial, while 8% found it to have no benefits. Let's read on. 23% of the studies. Okay, so 23% of those 60 research studies were inconclusive. That means no results at all. They were not able to determine whether medical marijuana was beneficial or not. So all in all, so far the author is talking about a certain percentage of these 60 research studies which yielded the fact that there were medical usages or medical benefits of medical marijuana, while there was also a good sizable percentage, that is 23%, which found that the medical marijuana benefits were not really clear. Let's read on. Although, okay, we know there is a contrast here coming up. Although there are numerous studies underway on medical marijuana, okay, so now the author is talking about current studies which are in progress. Let's see what about them. None have proved to be conclusive. So none of the current studies have really brought forward any result on the medical benefits of medical marijuana. Let's read on. Since, okay, so we know that the author is going to talk about reason why these results have proved to be inconclusive. Since research is challenged, that is, research is hindered by limited access given the FDA classification. So, FDA puts forward certain limitations which limit the research in turn, and because of that, these researchers have not provided or yielded any conclusive results. So, all in all, we can say that the research, which was carried out under constrained circumstances, have not been able to yield any conclusive or complete or accurate or clear results about whether medical marijuana is beneficial or not. So you see how we can divide a single paragraph passage into sections and derive the section summaries. We will now use these section summaries in the same way we use paragraph summaries to derive the main point of the passage. Let us see how. So here is the entire passage, and let us put all the section summaries, or as we call them, para summaries, together here. Let's do a quick recap of these section summaries to finally arrive at the main point. The first section is about opinions that exist both for and against the medical use of marijuana. Then the author talks about or elaborates on the benefits of medical marijuana as suggested by some past researchers. In the third paragraph, he talks about the side effects or the negative effects of medical marijuana. So see how he introduces right at the beginning that there are both pros and cons of the medical usage of marijuana. In the second section, he talks about the pros, and in the third section, he talks about the cons. Let us see how he ends the paragraph. In the last section of this paragraph, he says that research under constraints, that is, research carried out under limited conditions, has been inconclusive, that has not been able to provide clearly results whether medical marijuana is beneficial or not. All in all, therefore, if we put together these points, the main point that we arrive at is that in spite of a lot of research being carried out, it is not really clear whether medical marijuana is beneficial or not. And the author's purpose in writing this passage is to show this fact, to point out this fact. See how simple it was to derive the main point, even in a single paragraph passage? If you practice involved and evolved reading, then summarizing paragraphs or sections becomes easy, and that leads to derivation of the main point. Now, let us see with the help of examples how to identify that the question you are facing is a main point question. Let us now look at some official examples of main point questions and see what is common in them, which will help us to identify that they are main point questions. The passage is primarily concerned with which of the following? In the passage, the author is primarily interested in. Okay, the primary purpose of the passage is to. The passage is primarily concerned with. The author of the passage is primarily concerned with. So what is common in these questions? Well, we can see that in almost each of them, we are talking about the author's primary concern or primary interest, or we are talking about the primary concern of the passage, or the passage is primarily concerned or interested in, or the primary passage of the purpose of the passage. Which means the words and phrases primarily interested, primarily concerned, passage, author, put together, they indicate that it is a main point question. See how simple that was? Now that we have seen what a main point question looks like, let us look at a common trap laid by GMAT in main point question answer choices and how to avoid it. Remember, one of the main characteristics of a main point is that it is broad in scope and must cover the entire passage. That is, the main point answer choice must cover the entire passage. The test takers of GMAT often try to confuse a student by providing a main point answer choice that just covers a part of the passage or only some of the paragraphs of the passage. And this makes it an incorrect answer choice. This is what we call the trap of limited scope. Because the main point does not cover the entire passage, it is incorrect, and a student can avoid it by being aware of it while answering the main point questions. Let us demonstrate this further by taking an example. To discuss the trap of limited scope, we have brought forward the paragraph summaries of the previous passage, where we were discussing about the benefits and side effects of medical marijuana. We have also brought forward the main points of that particular passage. Now you will see that there are two versions of the main point here. Consider them to be two answer choices. Now if you read the first main point, it's given that the main point of this passage is to point out that despite extensive research, it remains inconclusive whether medical marijuana is beneficial or not. We already know from the previous slide that this is the correct main point because it is broad in scope and it covers the entire passage. It not only mentions the presence of benefits and side effects of medical marijuana, it also includes the concept that research has been unable to conclusively prove whether medical marijuana is beneficial or not. So we can say that this particular main point is broad in scope, and that is why it is correct. Now you, as a test taker, if you come across a main point answer choice for this passage, such as the following one, where it says the main point is to discuss the benefits and side effects of medical marijuana, you should be careful. Yes, the passage does talk about the medical benefits and side effects of medical marijuana, but that was only in the first three paragraphs, right? But this summary or this main point does not cover what is being said in the last paragraph. It does not bring out the idea that research has proved inconclusive in deciding whether medical marijuana is beneficial or not. So, as a student, you should be aware that this kind of answer choice is what means by limited scope, and it is therefore incorrect. We hope that this makes it clear to you what a limited scope trap is, and this is a very common trap. You can avoid it only by being diligently aware of it while you're solving the answer choices. Let us look at a few more common traps laid by GMAT test makers. Some of these upcoming common main traps that we will be discussing in the subsequent files are the trap of confusing words. Often confusing words, that is words with very little difference between them, are mentioned in the answer choices, and this confuses a student. We will be covering this particular aspect in the next concept lesson. Then we have other traps such as distorting the truth presented in the passage or offering half truths in the answer choices or offering familiar words from the passage in the answer choices. All these we will be covering in our ACE concept lesson later. ACE stands for answer choice elimination. To summarize, in this concept file, we have learned a lot of things about the main point of a passage. We have understood that it is the central idea of the passage and it is a summary of paragraph summaries. We have also understood that it is crucial to summarize a paragraph accurately in order to derive the main point correctly. We hope that you will inculcate this habit of deriving the main point from now onwards when you are solving passages. Please remember, it is possible to do all of this by diligently following the process of involved and evolved reading. So here's happy learning to all of you.